The first thing I did, after being reborn before the apocalypse, was spend every single cent of my savings to buy an underground shopping mall that had been abandoned for 10 years. Everyone said I was crazy, and even the broker laughed at me behind my back for being a fool. The construction captain standing right in front of the pitch-black entrance couldn't help but ask me, boss, in a creepy place like this, even rats wouldn't bother to live here. What did you buy it for? I just smiled without explaining anything. Because I am the only one who knows that in 7 days, the apocalypse will strike. That happens, a massive blizzard will cover the entire globe, and that is no ordinary. No, the snow contains an unidentified type of spore. Once it touches bare skin or enters the body through wounds the mouth or the nose, a mild case causes a high fever and coma, while a severe case leads to a complete loss of consciousness, turning you into an infected beast that only knows how to attack the living. And that is only the beginning of the apocalypse. After the snow falls, global temperatures will plummet from -30 degrees to -50 degrees before finally stabilizing at -80 degrees. Right after that, the power grid will collapse. Communication will be cut off, and the city's heating system will stop working. 30. The once prosperous surface will turn into a living hell in just a few short days. By then, money will just be scrap paper, and gold won't hold any value anymore. The things that can actually save your life are hot water, food, medicine, and fuel. A cup of hot water can be traded for a gold ring, and a single piece of dry ration can make someone who used to stand at the top throw away all their dignity, and even cause an entire building of people to turn on each other. But this underground shopping mall that everyone is trash-talking will become the ultimate shelter for the entire city. In my past life, I died in the 6th month after the massive blizzard hit. That time I did everything I could to protect my fiancée Lin Yuefei. I gave her my very last piece of winter clothing and her very last bowl of hot soup. I even walked through 3 kilometers of snow and ice just to find a fever reducer for her. Yet in the end, she personally opened the door to the room to safely expose all the supplies I had hoarded for half a year to Uncle Jan. That night, Uncle Jan brought over a dozen survivors, stormed into my shelter and robbed my coal, robbed my medicine, and robbed all my hopes of survival. Meanwhile, Lin Yuefei, wearing the winter clothes that I had risked my life to get for her, stood behind Uncle Jan and coldly looked at me. "Lu Chen, don't blame me. There are only so many supplies left. I can't just suffer along with you forever." After that, she pushed me out the door. The cold of -80 degrees fell upon my face. I didn't lose consciousness right away. I could hear the sound of them opening food cans inside the room, and I also heard Uncle Jan laughing and saying, "A useless piece of trash like this actually managed to survive until now? Consider him lucky, Lin." Yuefei didn't disagree, she just chuckled softly. At that very moment, I finally understood that the coldest thing in the apocalypse isn't the snow, but the human heart. Opening my eyes again, I had returned to 7 days before the blizzard. On the phone screen, there was still a text message sent by Lin Yuefei. "Lu Chen, my mom said that marriage requires a sense of security. Transfer the house ownership to my name first. After all, we are going to be family sooner or later anyway. Don't tell me you don't even have that little bit of sincerity." Looking at these lines, I flipped the phone face down on the table. In my past life, it was precisely because I wanted to give her that so-called sense of security that I transferred the house left by my parents to her name. As a result, after the apocalypse, she used that very house as a bargaining chip to trade for the protection of Uncle Jan. In this life, she still wants my house. Keep dreaming. 91. I straight up took the property deed to the bank. 3 hours later, the house deeds to the bank. 3 hours later. 93. The house mortgage was successfully approved. After that, I withdrew all my money from stocks and mutual funds. After that, I cashed out all my money from stocks and mutual funds and sold off all the shops left by my parents, including cars and valuable collectibles. Everything was panic sold at a cheap price. In the end, I managed to gather over 80 million in my hands. Before the apocalypse, this amount of money was enough for me to live an extremely well-off life. But 7 days later, I'm in no rush to buy supplies because I know very well that no matter how much stuff I have, if there is no safe place to store it, it will just be doing charity work for someone else. Therefore, the first thing I did was contact the owner of that abandoned shopping mall. In my past life, I checked the ownership of this place. It was unbelievably clean. No mortgages, no disputes, no debts, and none of those messy ownership dispute hassles. Its only problem was that the location was too remote, and it had been left empty for so long that no one bothered to touch it. It was originally an underground commercial street built 10 years ago, but due to poor business, It was just left vacant ever since. The ground-level entrance was worn out while the basement was gloomy and damp with hardly anyone living around it. In the eyes of others, it was an abandoned dead zone that nobody wanted, but I know it has 3 whole levels of underground space, thick walls, a complete ventilation system, and even an independent water well. More importantly, it used to be an air defense project that was later converted. The main structure, ventilation pipes, drainage system, and backup power lines are all still there. What I need to do is not build from scratch, but reinforce it based on the old foundation and restore its operations. With just a little renovation, it will be a natural apocalyptic fortress. Hearing that I wanted to buy it, the owner's eyes lit up instantly. Young man, are you sure you want to buy that godforsaken place for real? Absolutely. Back then, building this place cost over 50 million yuan. If you really want to take it over for 8 million, I'll transfer both the ownership and the underground parking lot to you. Boss, 5.8 million. He was slightly stunned, so I continued. We signed the contract today and full payment will be made within the day. Today. He went silent for a few seconds, then immediately slapped his thigh and said, deal. To him, that underground shopping mall had been abandoned for 10 years. Now, every year, just the maintenance fees and various accumulating debts were like a piece of rotting meat dragging him down on his back. Now that someone was willing to jump in and take the hit, he couldn't wait to shove the keys right into my hands. That very night after signing the contract, the 5.8 million was wired directly away. The way the owner looked at me was like looking at a total fool, but little did he know that 7 days later, let alone 5.8 million, even if you brought the tallest skyscraper in the city center to trade, I still wouldn't hand over this underground shopping mall. After signing the contract, I immediately called the construction crew in with only one single requirement. Within 7 days, they must turn this underground shopping mall into a true apocalyptic fortress. Basement 1 will be remodeled into a power room and a defensive buffer zone. Basement 2 will be remodeled into storage, cold storage, and a medical zone. Basement 3 will be remodeled into the living quarters. The entrance must be fitted with 3 layers of blast-proof steel doors. The hallways must be fitted with extra security barriers and electronic control doors. All exposed windows must be welded shut. The ventilation vents must have a filtration system installed, along with backflow prevention devices. Surveillance cameras must cover every single blind spot. The construction crew's captain, after hearing my requirements, his face went completely pale. Damn! Are you renovating a shopping mall or building a fallout shelter? I looked at him. Is the money enough? More than enough, totally enough. As long as the money is in my hands, let alone a shelter, I can build you an entire underground palace. If you want, I transferred a 500,000 deposit right on the spot. The captain saw the notification message of the money arriving, and the doubt on his face instantly turned into pure flattery. Boss, don't worry. Within 7 days, guaranteed to be done. After sorting out the renovation for the underground fortress 195, I finally started my massive shopping spree, beginning the mass hoarding campaign. Food, daily essentials, fuel, winter gear, medical kits. As long as it's needed in the apocalypse, I hoarded it all. Fuel was bought by the ton, medicine was stocked by the crate, and food was swept up by the entire warehouse. Personal protective equipment, I went for the full option, especially salt antibiotics, fever reducers, and disinfectants. 7 days later, just a small bag of salt will be enough to make countless people fight to the point of bloodshed. A box of antibiotics in the apocalypse is literally a second life. I bought a batch of frozen meat that a supermarket had canceled, including beef lamb chops, 209 chicken thighs, and frozen shrimp. All this frozen chicken drumsticks, frozen shrimp food items. Food had quarantine certificates, but just because the order was canceled, it was left in the cold storage, taking up space. The manager saw that I wanted to take 20 trucks of it at once, and his eyes totally lit up. Buddy, are you? Sure, taking all of it. Take everything. Clear it out. With this much merchandise, do you even have a place to store it? I nodded. The cold storage is already prepared. He didn't know that. While to him, this was just clearing out a warehouse, to me, this is my lifeline for many years to come. After the blizzard strikes, the city will lose power. Supermarkets will be looted clean, and logistics will be completely paralyzed. By that time, even half a piece of frozen meat will be enough to make people risk their lives. At 8 p.m., 20 refrigerated trucks entered the underground shopping mall, one after another. Boxes of beef lamb chops, chicken thighs, frozen shrimp, and frozen food were moved into the warehouse. The construction crew members looked on, totally dazed. The captain couldn't help but ask, "Boss, are you planning to open a hypermarket?" Something like that. They don't know that in 7 days, supermarkets will become ruins. Cold storages will become bloody battlegrounds, while this underground fortress beneath my feet will become the safest place in the entire city. Over the next few days, the shopping mall, which used to be gloomy and damp, was completely transformed. Power storage, medical, and living quarters were all perfectly partitioned. The diesel, generators, battery packs, and fuel reserves were all connected to independent lines. Even if the city's power grid is completely paralyzed, this place will still have electricity to use as usual. The living quarters on the 3rd basement floor were also remodeled. Aside from running your mouth, what exactly have you done? Completely as requested, according to my instructions. The bedrooms, kitchen, medical room, gym, monitoring room, and indoor greenhouse. Everything was ready. The water recycling and air filtration systems were running smoothly. There was even a small home theater. I don't just want to survive, I want to live in absolute comfort. In my past life, I suffered way too much. Moldy bread, dirty frozen water, and the leftover scraps that others threw away. I never want to touch those things ever again in this life. On the final night of the countdown, 264, the construction crew finished installing. Countdown. The construction team completed the installation phase. The last blast-proof security door. The captain tapped the thick metal surface proudly, saying, "Boss Lou, you can rest assured about this door, let alone ordinary people. Even if someone rams a car into it, they won't be able to open it." I looked at the heavy alloy door and nodded with satisfaction. A car, of course, wouldn't be able to break through. But after tonight, the things coming to ram, the door might not necessarily be cars anymore. After paying off the remaining balance, the construction crew all left. The thick security door slowly shut. With a heavy click, the entire underground shopping mall was completely sealed off from the outside world. I stood in the monitoring room watching dozens of screens light up at the same time. The main entrance, the backup emergency exits, the ventilation shafts, the underground parking lot, and even the surrounding streets. I had hidden cameras installed everywhere in advance, on street lamp poles and behind old worn-out billboards. The camera access rights of those nearby shops had also been bought by me, with cash beforehand. Right. Now every single feed was displayed crystal clear right before my eyes. The underground fortress was perfectly completed, and the supplies were fully stocked. In the warehouse, in the basement, 2 storage area rows of shelves stood silently under the lights. Grains, non-perishables, compressed food, rations, medicine, tools, protective, clothing, and emergency equipment, everything was sealed and organized by section. Every single door was equipped with electronic and mechanical locks. Every pathway was completely under the control of the cameras. I held the list, checking off every single item: food, water, medicine, fuel, heating, and filtration systems, defensive systems, all were in position and ready. Right at this moment, my phone rang. The caller was Lin Yuefei. After I picked up, her impatient voice immediately came through. "Lu Chen, what is the meaning of this? Why didn't you reply to my messages? My mom already said that if you don't transfer the house under my name, this wedding is off. And another thing, I heard from Zhou Yan that you mortgaged the house. Are you insane? That's supposed to be our bridal home in the future." I calmly replied, "Lin Yuefei, that's the house my parents left for me. What does it have to do with you?" Her voice instantly turned into a screech. "Lu Chen, are you seriously counting pennies with me? Now I am your fiancé, and a man who can't even bring himself to give me a house still claims he loves me. How, if it were my past self hearing this, I definitely would have panicked, apologized, explained, and coaxed her, trampling over the last bit of my own dignity. But now I only find it ridiculous. Lin Yuefei, didn't you want a sense of security?" Her tone softened up a bit just now. "That's more like it. Then tomorrow I directly cut her off. Go find Zhou Yan, then he has plenty of that sense of security." The other end of the line instantly went dead silent. A few seconds later, Lin Yuefei screamed in a furious rage, "Lu Chen, are you sick or something? How dare you talk to me like that? Do you believe that I will call off the wedding right now? Then call it off. Bye. By the way, tell your mom that I'm not giving her the bride price either, and remember to return half of the wedding photo money to me." After speaking, I directly hung up. The very next second, Lin Yuefei's text messages flooded in. "Lu Chen, you're dead. To me, if you apologize right now, there's still time. Let me tell, you guys are lining up to chase me. Zhou Yan is way more understanding than you. Don't you dare regret this. I looked at the final message and turned off the phone. Regret. In 7 days, the one who will regret it is you. Midnight. Outside, the window. The wind suddenly picked up. I walked over to the monitoring screen. On the street below, pedestrians were still laughing and joking. Electric scooters sped past convenience stores were still brightly lit, and barbecue stalls were billowing thick smoke. The whole city was still immersed in a normal and quiet night. No one knew that the countdown had ended. 12 o'clock. The first snowflake slowly drifted down from the sky. It fell onto the back of the hand of a drunk guy on the roadside. The drunk guy was stunned. What kind of ghostly weather is this? Why is it suddenly snowing? I switched to a high-resolution camera to zoom in on the image. The very next second, the guy's movements stiffened and abnormal patterns appeared on his skin. His eyes began to grow vacant and a suppressed growling sound came from his throat. Right after that, he lunged at a pedestrian next to him. A piercing scream echoed from the top of the street. The snow fell heavier and heavier and the street descended into absolute chaos. Some people frantically brushed the snow off themselves, some turned around and ran, while others tried to hide inside a convenience store only to realize that the entrance was already packed with people. Within just a few short minutes, the entire street lost control. The monitoring screens shook violently. On the snow, there were soon only chaotic footprints and glaring bloodstains left. The entire city at this very moment officially fell into darkness. Meanwhile, I sat inside the warm shelter, holding a freshly cooked bowl of beef noodles. The broth was piping hot, and the beef was as tender as can be. In the air, there was even a faint aroma of scallions. Looking at the chaotic street on the monitoring screen, there was no gloating in my heart, only absolute silence. Everything finally unraveled. The apocalypse officially began. I was in no rush to turn off the cameras, because I knew the real chaos had only just started. For the first 10 minutes, most people still thought this was just a sudden natural disaster, extreme weather, or some short-term incident. But 20 minutes later, the first batch of infected people had completely lost control. They didn't fear the cold, didn't fear pain, and had no sanity left. As long as they heard the sound of the living, they would be drawn to it. On the monitoring screen, the city lights flickered out block by block, leaving nothing but the blizzard filling the sky. 410. And the screams echoing one after another from afar. The city's communications and chicken noises coming one after another from afar. The communication of were not yet completely cut off. Some base stations were still relying on backup power, so the signal was on and off. No one knew how much longer they could hold out. It was precisely because of this that the messages in the birthday group chat kept popping up non-stop. What on earth is happening outside? Why did it suddenly start snowing? Someone has gone crazy. The hotel lobby is completely chaotic. Hurry and call the police. The police hotline won't go through. Lu Chen, do you know anything? The person texting was Zhou Yan. He was still up to his old tricks. When danger strikes, the first thing he thinks of is never to take responsibility, but to find someone else to take the blame. Right after that, a voice call from Lin Yuefi came in. I didn't pick up. She called again and I still didn't pick up. After 5 consecutive missed calls, she finally sent a text message over Lu Chen. Where are you? Something went wrong outside. Hurry up and come pick me up. I'm at the Jinyue Hotel, and there are so many crazy people outside. Are you listening to me? I looked at the screen, my expression perfectly calm. The Jinyue Hotel, just like in the past life. Her birthday party was still held there, except in this life I didn't go. Replied with 2 words, not free. The message was barely sent when Lin Yuefei replied almost instantly, Lu Chen, what do you mean I am your fiancé? It's this dangerous right now, and yet you dare to say you're not free? Are you even a man? Even though the apocalypse had already begun, she still thought I should be just like before listening to her every word and immediately rushing into danger to save her. The wedding is off. You are no longer my fiancé. The other end went silent for a few seconds. Right. After that, a barrage of furious messages popped up. Lu Chen, are you crazy? Is this the time to be throwing a tantrum? Something huge really happened outside. Come pick me up right now. As long as you come, I can forgive you. Forgive. Seeing this word, I almost burst out laughing. Forgive me. Even at this point, she still thought she was handing out charity. I didn't reply to her anymore, but switched to the peripheral security cameras I had set up beforehand. One of those cameras happened to capture the street near the Jinyu Hotel. The footage was a bit laggy, but it was enough to see the absolute chaos in front of the hotel entrance. Several cars had crashed into each other with shattered glass covering the ground. The lobby was packed with people. Some wanted to rush outside while some wanted to hide indoors. Before long, I saw Lin Yufei at the second-floor banquet hall window. She was wearing a white dress, and the exquisite makeup on her face was more than half smudged. Right now she was holding her phone, crying while constantly looking outside. And right next to her, Zhou Yan was trying to hold the door shut. Several mutual friends were also so terrified that their faces were completely drained of blood. These were the exact same people who, when I was pushed out of the shelter in my past life, not a single one stood up to speak for me. Now they are finally tasting the flavor of pure terror themselves. I closed the group chat and started checking the systems of the shelter. Power normal. Heating normal. Air filtration normal. Water purification system normal. External cameras normal. The 3 layers of blast-proof doors were tightly locked. In the first-floor power room, the diesel generator had automatically started. The low, muffled, humming sound vibrating through the thick walls felt like a steadily beating heart. The indoor temperature was 24 degrees, while the outdoor temperature was minus 36 degrees, and this number was still continuing to drop. I knew that by noon today at the latest, the outdoor temperature would drop below minus 80 degrees. By then, let alone ordinary people, even ordinary vehicles, will be frozen and unable to start. The real freezing hell has not even arrived yet. The next day when I woke up, it was already 9 in the morning. I immediately turned on the monitoring cameras. The outside world had completely changed. The entire city was buried in snow. The streets were full of smashed vehicles, and roadside billboards were frozen and cracked, hanging precariously in midair, just waiting to fall. The convenience store entrances were messy and completely ruined. A few infected people were moving sluggishly on the snow. As long as they heard the slightest sound, they would suddenly snap their heads up, searching for the direction of the living. I looked at the outdoor temperature, minus 72 degrees. It was dropping even faster than in my past life. Right at this moment, the shelter's external intercom system suddenly rang. Someone was approaching the basement entrance. Adjusted the camera feed and saw 3 men wrapped in thick blankets, scarves tied around their faces and hands, tucked inside their sleeves. They were barely showing their eyes, fighting against the blizzard as they stumbled toward the entrance. One of them I recognized, Wang Hai, the property manager of a nearby residential apartment complex. In my past life, at the beginning of the apocalypse, he had organized the survivors from the neighboring areas, putting up a front of mutual assistance. But behind their backs, they plundered quite a lot of supplies from others. This kind of person is even scarier than the infected. Right now, Wang Hai was pounding hard on the outer iron door of the underground shopping mall. Is anyone there? Open the door. We are about to freeze to death. Is there anyone inside? Open up and let me in. I didn't say a word, just quietly watched the camera. Wang Hai pounded for a long time, and seeing no response from inside, he immediately changed his attitude. I know there's someone inside. Wasn't this place still under construction? A few days ago. Hurry up and open the door. We are in a special period right now. Resources must be shared with each other. Hearing this, I turned on the external speaker. After a static hiss, my voice came out of the speaker at the door. Based on what right? Wang Hai abruptly snapped his head up to look at the camera. Who the hell are you? Right after that, as if remembering something, you're that fool from a few days ago who bought up this underground shopping mall. Do I still look like a fool to you now? Wang Hai choked on his words. The faces of the 2 guys next to him looked at the newly installed camera at the entrance, then looked at that ultra-thick, blast-proof door. Their expressions shifted instantly. They knew this place had already been heavily renovated. Those cargo trucks constantly going in and out a few days ago also made them guess what was inside. There was power heating and supplies. Wang Hai immediately changed his tune. Little brother, we're all neighbors. Here, right now it's so dangerous. Outside, you can't just watch us die and not save us, right? Just let us in to warm up for a bit, just to warm up, rest assured. We won't stay for free in the future. Everyone can guard this place together. Lu Chen, don't be too selfish. The outside world has turned into this. Is it fair for you to monopolize such a massive place? 576. I wasn't provoked by him. Worth it, I wasn't affected by him at all, only calmly. Said, I can give you guys directions. 300 meters to the east, there's a community hospital. The walls are thick, and there are many doors so you can temporarily shield yourselves from the wind. Go another 500 meters north, and there's an entrance to an underground parking lot. Getting in there is much easier than here. If you guys leave now, you still have a chance. Continuing to pound on the door will only attract the infected. But Wang Hai completely refused to listen. He pointed at the camera and cursed, "Don't you dare trick me! You just want to chase us away. Government rescue will be here soon, and I will report you. First." I looked at the blizzard, growing increasingly violent behind him, my voice turning a few degrees colder. "Then you'd better survive until the rescue arrives." As soon as the words left my mouth, the feed switched to a low, muffled growl. The three men with Wang Hai froze simultaneously. On the monitoring screen from the corner of the street, several figures were stumbling forward. Their bodies were completely covered in ice and snow, and their pupils were pitch black. Wang Hai's voice changed instantly. "Lu Chen, open the door. Quick, open the door." I didn't open the door because I knew very well that as long as I opened the first door, countless disasters would follow. The outer buffer zone had not yet completed disinfection, and anyone rushing in carrying the spores from the snow could destroy this entire fortress. "I am warning you for the last time. Run east right. Now there is still time." After speaking, I turned off the external speaker. Outside, Wang Hai frantically pounded on the door, but the security door still stood perfectly still. The very next second, several dark figures lunged through the blizzard. The footage on the camera shook violently. I didn't watch any further, not because I was soft-hearted, 620, but because I knew the harsh law of the apocalypse had already given the answer. It's not that if you scream, sentenced already, no need to rescue. Louder, others have to risk their lives to save you. Nor is it that if you play the moral, high ground card, others must hand over their survival path to you. 12 p.m. The outdoor temperature was minus 86 degrees. The snow kept falling non-stop, and the entire city seemed buried under a thick layer of ice and snow. On the streets, almost no living people could be seen anymore. There were only the infected sluggishly roaming in the snow. 631 vertical bar. Their movements, compared to last night, were no longer stiff, and their hearing seemed even sharper. A car alarm suddenly went off, and less than 10 seconds later, over a dozen nearby dark figures turned their heads simultaneously and rushed toward the sound. Watching this scene, I slightly frowned. It was exactly like in my memory. The monsters, infected by the spores in the snow, will continuously evolve. On the first day, they will be attracted by loud noises. Starting from the third, 643 day, they will become more sensitive to small sounds. Third, they will become more sensitive to noises and heat sources. After the 7th day, there will even appear mutated variants that can climb and break through doors. This means my underground fortress must stand firm against the first wave of trials within 7 days. And the trial came very quickly. At 2 p.m. on the monitoring screen, at the far end of the street outside the underground shopping mall, a group of people appeared, numbering about more than 20. There were men and women, some supporting the injured, others carrying luggage. They had probably fumbled their way from the underground parking lot of the nearby residential area, walking all the way here. Their bodies were wrapped in down jackets, cotton quilts, plastic raincoats, and even curtains. Their faces were wrapped in scarves, and over their eyes, they even wore transparent plastic pieces they had crudely cut themselves. The eyebrows and eyelashes of their eyes were also fully covered in ice and snow. On the backs of the hands and necks of several people, abnormal black spots had even appeared, with black blood seeping from those cracks back into their bodies. The one leading them was none other than Wang Hai. He was actually still alive, except at this very moment. The look in his eyes was even more frenzied than this morning. Right beside him were several young men holding iron bars, crowbars, and fire axes in their hands. Clearly they didn't come to beg for help, they came to force the door. I turned on the external speaker system. As the sound broadcasted from the speaker, at the main entrance, the crowd instantly went silent. "Leave this place. No people will be accepted here." From within the crowd, the sound of weeping and wailing immediately rang out. "How can you be so heartless, just letting us in to warm up for a bit? What's wrong with that? You're monopolizing such a huge place. All by yourself. Aren't you afraid of divine retribution?" Wang Hai took the opportunity to shout loudly. Everyone heard that, right? He clearly has shelter supplies and even heating equipment, yet he absolutely refuses to let us in, holding onto private property at a time like this. He truly has no humanity. I quietly watched him. I had to admit that Wang Hai really knew how to incite people's minds. He knew he couldn't get in by himself, so he dragged everyone else into it. As long as I didn't open the door, I would become the villain in the crowd's mouth. Unfortunately, this trick is useless against me. At this moment, I spoke up. First, this underground shopping mall is mine. Second, this place does not yet meet the requirements for mass quarantine. Third, among you guys, some have already developed black spots. Once you force your way in, everyone will be dragged down with you. Fourth, the outside is getting even more noisy, making it easier to attract the infected. I will give directions one more time. 300 meters east is the community hospital. 500 meters north is the parking lot. If you want to live, leave right now before they manage to gather here. This is the last warning I can give. But Wang Hai was clearly not satisfied. He sneered. Everyone don't listen to him. He's saying all that just to trick us into leaving inside. He definitely has a ton of supplies. As long as we all rush forward together, he won't dare not to open the door. 712 vertical bar. Several young men immediately rushed, upholding iron bars and fire axes, slamming them hard against the outer iron door. Bam! The jarring sound of impact echoed far into the deserted street. I've already given the final warning. Stop pounding on the door. The noise will lure the infected here. Wang Hai acted as if he were deaf. He even screamed louder. Everyone shout together. Make him open the door. He won't dare watch us. The crowd was riled up by him, shouting, Open the door! Open the door! The screams, one after another, echoed far away amidst the howling blizzard. I didn't try to advise them any further, switching the monitoring screen to look at both sides of the street. Sure enough, in the distance, a few wandering infected slowly raised their heads. Right after that, a second one, a third one, a fifth one. More and more dark figures turned around from the sheet of snow. They had heard it. Wang Hai was still screaming my name, Lu. Chen, your refusal to open the door is killing everyone. Leaning back in my chair, I calmly looked at him. The one who brought them. Here is you. The very next second, the first dark figure dashed out from the street corner. Shrieks erupted within the crowd, and the scene instantly descended into chaos. The men who were just pounding on the door immediately threw down their tools, turned around, and fled. Some tripped, some grabbed each other, and some cried and screamed as they rushed into the blizzard. Wang Hai's face completely changed. He turned around, intending to hide, but he had barely taken 2 steps before being grabbed tightly by a man. Wang Hai, you were the one who said we could get in. Here, don't you dare run. Let go of me, you fools, let go. Here, don't even think about running. Let go. You guys are stupid. Then suffer the consequences. What does it have to do with me? The moment these words came out, the faces of the surrounding people all twisted, but they no longer had the time to be furious, because the blizzard and the chaos quickly engulfed the scene outside the entrance. I sat in the monitoring room, not moving an inch, nor did I open the door, because I understood very well that if I showed soft-heartedness, now the one dead would be me. A few minutes later, outside the door, it became quiet again. The snow was still falling heavily, and on the ground were scattered iron bars, cotton quilts, and a few shoes. The survivors had scattered in all directions, and Wang Hai had also vanished, unknown whether he had managed to escape or had been swallowed by the blizzard. I turned off the external speaker, then zoomed in on the monitoring screen at the entrance to confirm that the outer defense layer was completely undamaged. Very good. Against the first wave of attack, the underground fortress remained safe and sound. Right at this moment, my phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't Lin Yufei, but Zhou Yi. Lu Chen, I know where you're hiding now. The underground shopping. I'm all right, just you. Wait, we are coming over right away. It looks like the news about the shopping mall had already reached Zhou Ye's ears. As for whether it was leaked by Wang Hai or told to him by Lin Yufei, it was no longer important. What mattered was that they were finally targeting me. It's just that in this life, the door is in my hands, the supplies are in my hands, and the path to survival is also in my hands. I slowly typed out a reply. Come on then, I'm waiting for you guys. After sending the message, I opened the map and glanced over it. The Jin Yue Hotel was less than a kilometer away from the shopping mall as the crow flies. In between, there was an abandoned tunnel section. Before driving, it took only a few minutes, but right Now this 1 kilometer had blizzards, extreme cold, the infected, and a bunch of out-of-control people. If they want to survive and make it here, it won't be that easy. 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m. Near the periphery of the Jinyue Hotel, the security camera finally caught a blurry group of people. The blizzard was too massive, so I couldn't see each face clearly. They appeared at times on the corner camera and at times disappeared into the sheet of snow. Zhou Yan was leading Lin Yufei and several mutual friends struggling bitterly as they moved toward the shopping mall. Their bodies were wrapped in cotton, quilts taken from the hotel storage tablecloths, and neon raincoats. Their faces were wrapped in sheets and scarves. Their hands and feet were also crudely wrapped with plastic wrap duct tape and trash bags. However, each time they reappeared on the monitoring screen, their head count dropped by a few people. Some couldn't walk anymore and were forced to stay behind in the shops along the roadside. Some chose to hide in alleys and could never catch up again. When they finally approached the shopping mall, the initial dozen or so people had only 7 left. Lin Yufei was being dragged by the arm by Zhou Yan, her face as pale as a sheet of paper. She used to be the person who cared about appearance the most. Whenever she went out, her makeup had to be exquisite, and even a speck of dust on her shoes would make her grumpy. But right now her entire body was smeared with filthy blood, her hair messy and stuck to her face, looking as wretched as a refugee. I sat in the monitoring room, watching quietly without a single shred of pity. In my past life, I was the one who crawled step by step through the snow like this, except back. Then I braved the blizzard just to find medicine for her. But in this life she came here just to beg me to open the door. Very quickly behind them appeared several swaying dark figures. Zhou Yan clearly noticed them too. His face shifted instantly and he immediately picked up the pace. Hurry up, the shopping mall is right ahead. As long as we get in there, we will be saved. Lin Yufei was already so frozen that her lips were turning purple. She cried and said, Zhou Yan, I can't walk anymore. Zhou Yan turned his head to glance at her, a flash of impatience appearing in his eyes. What time do you think it is? And you're still throwing a tantrum. Lin Yufei froze. If it were before, Zhou Yan was always gentle and attentive to her, bringing her water, for her carry her bag and always act, understanding in front of her. The apocalypse had only just begun, yet his patience for her had completely run out. Lin Yufei finally realized that Zhou Yan had never been the reliable shield she thought he was. But everything was already too late. Half an hour later, they finally appeared outside the entrance of the underground shopping mall. Zhou Yan raised his head to look at the camera pounding hard on the outer iron door. Lu Chen opened the door. We're here, Lin Yufei also raised her head, tears instantly streaming down. Lu Chen, it's me. I know you're inside. Can you open the door, please? I really know I was wrong. I turned on the external broadcast system. After the static of the current buzzed, my voice came out from the speaker. Wrong about what? Lin Yufei, as if grasping at straws, hurriedly said, I shouldn't have forced you to transfer the house, shouldn't have said those words that hurt you, and shouldn't have been too close with Zhou Yan. Lu Chen, as long as you let me in, I will completely listen to you from now on. Zhou Yan's face darkened. Lin Yufei, however, didn't even look at him. She just kept her eyes glued to the camera, crying like a pear blossom drenched in rain. If it were my past life, seeing her like this would have probably made my heart melt instantly, but now I only found it ridiculous. I continued, Lin Yufei, if I open the door now, can you guarantee you won't side with Zhou Yan? Can you guarantee you won't join them in forcing me to hand over the supplies here? Can you guarantee that after entering the door you won't view this place as belonging to all of you? Lin Yufei gaped, unable to say a single word, because she knew very well in her heart that if this door really opened, the first thing she would think of might not be gratitude toward me, but how to survive next, how to get Zhou Yan inside too, and how to turn this place into her new reliance. Zhou Yan's expression shifted slightly. He quickly reacted, sneering, Lu Chen, don't play your divide and conquer tricks there. The outside is crawling with infected right now, yet you're hiding inside just to interrogate us. I looked at her. Zhou Yan, what you actually wanted was never a path to survival, but the supplies here. From the moment you found out about the location of this underground shopping mall, what you thought about was not begging for help, but how to get inside and how to seize the things within. Zhou Yan's expression completely changed. She stopped pretending, bent down to pick up a stone, and aggressively threw it at the camera's protective housing. A loud thud rang out. The protective Housing only vibrated without even a single crack appearing. Lu Chen, stop acting all high and mighty, I'm telling you. If you don't open the door today, just wait until I get inside and the stuff here might not even belong to you anymore. Lin Yuefei's face turned pale. She finally understood that Zhou Yan didn't want to beg me to save their lives at all. She wanted to break in and plunder the supplies in the shopping mall while she was merely a pawn for Zhou Yan to force me to open the door. She hurriedly took a step back, looking at Zhou Yan. Yan, didn't you say it was just to get Lu Chen to save us? Zhou Yan whipped her head around, the gentleness on her face completely vanishing. What time do you think it is? And you still think that just begging will make him open the door? Lin Yuefei was struck dumb. Zhou Yan sneered, if you hadn't said that Lu Chen was soft-hearted and that he used to listen to you the most, would I be foolish enough to risk bringing you here? Why, do you think I protected you all along the way because you're the one who can make him open the door? As long as the door opens, the supplies inside are our actual path to survival. Lin Yuefei stood frozen on the spot. She had always thought Zhou Yan treated her well, sincerely, or at least in a situation like this she would protect her. But in the end, she was only a tool used by Zhou Yan to open this door. Sitting in the monitoring room, I lightly tapped on the desk. Sometimes the truth doesn't require me to lift a finger. They will rip off each other's masks themselves. Right at that moment, a low growl echoed from afar. Several dark figures had already been attracted by their commotion. I reminded them, they're here. I'll remind you guys you have 30 seconds left. Zhou Yan's expression shifted. Pounding on the door again. Lu Chen, open the door right. Now open the door immediately and I can still guarantee I won't touch you. I didn't answer. Even at this stage, she was still acting all high and mighty. Lin Yuefei's legs went weak and she slumped down on the snow. She wanted to crawl back up, but her limbs were already frozen stiff from the cold. She could only cry while looking into the camera. Lu Chen, please. I didn't want it to be like this. Really know I was wrong. I looked at her feeling neither pleasure in my heart nor pity. 965. Only a calm sense of closure. Lin Yuefei, indifferently as if it was already ordained. Lin Yue, I gave you chances, but every single time you chose someone else. This time I'm choosing myself. She completely broke down. Lu Chen, please give me just one more chance. I didn't reply any further. The dark figures in the distance were getting closer and closer. Zhou Yan finally panicked as well. She turned her head to look, then looked at the emergency bag in Lin Yuefei's hands. That was the item I had just dropped from the external delivery. Shoot. Inside were a few packs of compressed biscuits, 2 packs of heat warmers, and a map to the temporary shelter point. Lin Yuefei clutched it tightly like grasping at the last life-saving straw. Zhou Yan suddenly lunged over and snatched the emergency bag. Lin Yuefei was stunned. Zhou Yan, what are you doing? Zhou Yan didn't even bother to look at her turning around to make a run for it. Lin Yuefei finally fully understood at this very moment. At the final moment, the only person Zhou Yan wanted to save was herself, stumbling. She chased after her, grabbing tightly onto the edge of her jacket. Zhou Yan, you can't leave me. Zhou Yan turned her head back, her face full of pure malice. Get lost, get lost. She shoved hard, throwing Lin Yuefei flat onto the snow. The emergency bag in her hands was also completely stolen by Zhou Yan. Lin Yuefei was dazed. Zhou Yan, that's what Lu Chen gave to me. But Zhou Yan didn't stop at all, turning around and running toward the street corner. Inside were compressed biscuits, heat warmers, and the map to the shelter point. That was the only thing that could help them hold out after leaving this place. Yet she didn't even bother to look back at Lin Yuefei once. Lin Yuefei lay flat on the snow, watching Zhou Yan's figure drift further and further away. At that moment, she seemed to finally understand something. Zhou Yan had never thought about saving her. What she wanted were only things that could help herself survive, while she was just a tool used to open this door. She didn't lose to the apocalypse, nor did she lose to the infected. She lost to her own greed and betrayal. Lin Yuefei painfully raised her head, looking right at the camera. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but the blizzard was too intense. Could no longer hear it clearly. The monitoring screen flickered a few times as several dark figures approached from within the sheet of snow. I didn't look any further, simply shutting off that screen. A few minutes later, within the external audio receiver, There was only the sound of the wind. Joe Yan didn't send any more messages, and Lin Yuefei's chat window never lit up again. The next morning, I turned the main gate's camera back on. Outside the security door, there was only the coat I once gave Lin Yuefei, half buried by the wind and snow. I stared at it for a long time, then turned off the screen. Only at this very moment did the deep resentment, heavy in my heart for an entire lifetime, truly vanish. The next morning, I turned back on the backup camera at the street corner. Zhou Yan didn't manage to run far after stealing the emergency bag. Initially, she planned to head to the temporary shelter point on the map, but she was too afraid of others stealing her supplies along the way. Clutching the bag tightly to her chest to avoid other survivors, she didn't follow the safe route I had marked, but instead slipped into a shorter side alley. In my past life, that alley was exactly where the most infected gathered. On the monitor, Zhou Yan had just run in for the few steps when several dark figures inside the alley slowly turned around. She seemed to sense something wrong too instantly, stopping her footsteps, wanting to run back out. But it was already too late. More and more infected emerged from behind the gusts of wind and snow and discarded vehicles surrounding Zhou Yan. Clutching the emergency bag, she frantically backed up, but stumbling dark figures also appeared at the entrance of the alley. Her retreat was completely cut off. On the monitoring screen, she was frantically pounding on the rolling shutter door next to her, then turned her head toward the shopping mall, screaming something. But the distance was too far, and I couldn't hear it clearly. In the next second, several dark figures lunged forward simultaneously. Zhou Yan's figure was instantly submerged by the infected. The wind and snow quickly buried the entrance of the alley, also completely burying her final struggling figure. From then on, Zhou Yan never appeared again. I turned off that monitoring screen, and the monitoring room became peaceful once more. Outside, there was the wind and snow, the growls of the infected, and the old world that had completely collapsed. But at my place, the heating was stable and the lights were brightly lit. I went into the kitchen, ladling myself a bowl of hot soup. When I took the first sip and the steaming hot soup went down my throat into my stomach, I finally truly realized, yes, I had survived. Since that day, no one else dared to openly come like Wang Hai or Zhou Yan to force me to open the door anymore. Wang Hai was missing, Zhou Yan never showed up again, and Lin Yuefei had also permanently disappeared in that massive blizzard. But I knew this didn't mean the danger was over. On the contrary, the true cruelty of the apocalypse had only just begun. After communication lines were completely cut off, the entire city fell into a prolonged, eerie silence. The phone could no longer receive any messages, and the chat group stopped dead. At the final cry for help, the signal bars turning completely empty. For the first 2 days, I would still occasionally open my phone to take a look. After that, I locked it away in a drawer. This world could no longer rely on a single phone to stay connected anymore. The world's first massive blizzard fell continuously for half a month. For half a month, the sky outside barely even lit up. The difference between day and night was reduced to just a slight grayish shift on the monitoring screen. Snow piled high across the streets, completely covering car roofs, blocking the lower exits of every single building, and burying countless figures who didn't manage to leave the roadsides in time. During the coldest snaps, the outdoor temperature plummeted to -80 degrees. In such a low temperature, ordinary people absolutely could not stay outside for too long. After half a month, the blizzard finally eased up a bit. The temperature also gradually recovered from its lowest point back to around -40 or 50 degrees. For ordinary people, this was still a fatal temperature level, but at least it allowed a small number of survivors to move around short distances. It was also during those few days that I gradually grasped the infection rules of the spores in the snow. This snow wouldn't make you lose control instantly upon contact. If it was just brief contact through layers of clothing, there was still a chance to deal with it. What was truly dangerous was melted snow soaking into wounds, eyes, nose, mouth, or staying on the skin for too long. Once dark spots appeared on the skin, it meant the infection process, 1137, had already begun. Based on my past life's experience, the longest had begun. Based on the experiences from my past life, the time incubation period was around 72 hours. Therefore, the very first iron rule I set for the underground base was that any outsider must be quarantined for 72 hours. Short by even a single minute was not allowed. A few times I saw survivors come out of residential buildings They used bed sheets to wrap their bodies, plastic bags to cover their shoes, and held crude tools in their hands, wanting to go to the supermarket across the street to look for food. But they hadn't stepped out very far when dark figures in the snow slowly began to move. The infected ones, they hid half their bodies in the snowbanks. Normally, they lay perfectly still and motionless, looking frozen solid, but the moment they sensed the vibration of footsteps, a heat source, or heard a sound, they would lunge toward the passing figure. The monitoring screen was quickly obscured by the wind and snow. I didn't look any further. In my past life, there were scenes that, looking too clearly, had only made it harder to blink. Initially, the infected only instinctively chased 1,163 after living people. A few days later, they began following the living. A few days later, they began to become sensitive to sounds, vibrations, and heat sources. By the 7th day, the first batch of high-risk infected appeared. Their mobility visibly increased. One infected individual, attracted by a heat source, crept near the ventilation opening on the outer wall of the shopping mall. When the infrared camera flashed an alert signal, I was checking the power. A piercing alarm rang out. At that moment, my heart skipped a beat, not from fear, but because the memories of people breaking down my door in my past life instantly flooded back. I immediately switched to the screen monitoring the ventilation opening. On the camera, that infected was lingering by the outer wall, approaching the metal protective grill. The next second, it slammed right into it. Thud. 1,183. The entire ventilation pipe vibrated slightly. Even the ventilation pipes are vibrating a bit. I didn't move, just keeping my eyes glued to the screen. Thud. A second time. Thud a third time. The protective grill didn't deform at all. The filtration system showed nothing abnormal. 1,190, and the backflow preventer was still operating stably. Stable when, only then, did I let out a sigh of relief. Good thing I had pre-installed extra soundproofing layers for the ventilation system beforehand. With the cold energy exchanger and the camouflaged ventilation opening, the temperature of the exhausted air was actually very low, and the sound was also reduced to the absolute minimum. That infected was only drawn by the occasional heat leakage, rather than actually finding an entrance. In my past life, I didn't even have a single door that could truly block anyone. In this life, I built myself a literal fortress that completely shuts out the apocalypse. That infected lingered outside for a long time, eventually losing its target and slowly leaving the monitoring range. In the days that followed, more and more infected were drawn in by the heat sources and the low-frequency noise of the machinery. Some banged on the doors, some stopped near the outer protective grill, and some loitered near the entrance. The noise was extremely piercing, like someone using a sharp object to slowly scrape back and forth outside the door. I didn't turn off the cameras, nor did I completely block out the sound, because I had to get used to it. The apocalypse wouldn't become any quieter just because I was afraid. I lived according to my schedule. Every day at 7 a.m., I woke up to check the electricity, fuel, and water recycling system, inspect the air filtration system, record the outdoor temperature and the activity paths of the infected, then eat, work out, clean the warehouse area, and patrol the 3 underground floors. During the first few days, I always slept fitfully. Waking up in the middle of the night at the slightest noise, I would glue my eyes to the monitors for a very long time. Sometimes I dreamed that I was back in my past life, dreaming of Lin Yufei shouting to open the door, and dreaming of Zhou Yan leading people to storm in. After waking up, I would sit in the dark for a long time until I confirmed that all 3 layers of riot doors were tightly locked and the power was running normally before I was willing to lie back down. This thing called a sense of security doesn't just instantly develop from having supplies. It needs to be confirmed day by day. Confirming the doors are still there, confirming the food is still there, and confirming that I will never be pushed outside by anyone ever again. On the 10th day, I planted the first batch of vegetables. On the 3rd underground floor, lettuce, green onions, potatoes, and a few pots of tomatoes. When burying the seeds into the nursery trays, my hands paused for a long time. In the first half year of the apocalypse in my past life, I barely saw any real green. Edible leaves had been plundered clean long ago, and even the grass in the residential area's planters was dug up by people to cook. I looked at the screen for a long time. That face, I recognized it from my past life. To find fever medicine for Lin Yufei, I had met him at an abandoned clinic. At that time, the clinic had already been ransacked. I was almost in despair, but He took out from a compartment of a medicine box the last 2 fever pills and gave them to me. His hands were freezing and trembling, the pills wrapped in a layer of paper with all the edges worn and torn. I froze on the spot. What about you? I'm old, I'll endure, whichever day I can. You're still young. If you can save one more person, then save them. Those pills in the end saved Lin Yuefei. But she would never know that it was something an old man who was about to give up had saved from his own life. I turned on the external speaker, asking him if he had directly touched the snow. The old man raised his head, his voice so raspy that it was almost unhearable. No direct contact. Did your arms get frostbite, any dark spots? I didn't open the door right away, but activated the buffer zone outside. The first door opened a crack just enough for one person to enter. After he entered inside, the first door closed immediately. Next was the snow-blowing wind curtain and spraying disinfectant, thoroughly processing the outer clothing, providing disposable protective gear, and a backup cotton coat, checking body temperature and checking for wounds. He stayed in the outer buffer zone for a quarantine of full 72 hours. During these 72 hours, I only passed water to him through the supply slot, along with compressed biscuits and basic medicine. On the night of the 3rd day, confirming he was not infected, had no high fever, and had no intention of attacking, I finally allowed him into the first underground floor's isolation room. When he saw me, he didn't ask if he could stay behind first, but looked toward the medical room, asking in a very soft voice, "Are there still usable medicines here?" I looked at him and he gave a bitter smile. Don't misunderstand, I'm a doctor. Seeing medicine, I just can't help but think of patients. Medicine, unable to stop myself from thinking about illness. Patients first. I looked at his hunched back, remaining silent. For a very long time, the apocalypse will turn many people into demons, but there will always be those who remember who they originally were. From that day on, I no longer blocked every single person outside the door anymore, except each time the door opened, rules had to be followed. Later on, I saved another pair of siblings. When the young boy was chased by the infected near the shopping mall, he himself was about to give out, yet he still tightly held his younger sister in his arms. When knocking on the door, he only said one thing, "Please save my sister, don't have to come in." I let them into the buffer zone. After 72 hours of quarantine, both siblings survived. When the young boy woke up and wanted to kneel before me, I stopped him. The third person was the worker who had once reminded me to pay attention to safety during construction before building the bunker. When he arrived, one of his legs had almost completely lost sensation. He spoke through the speaker. "Boss, I won't cause trouble. I only have this repair tool set on me. If you're willing to take me in, I'll fix the pipes and wiring for you in the future. If not, just showing me a path to block the wind is fine too." I stayed silent for a long time, but ultimately still let him into the buffer zone. The old doctor took 3 days just to save his leg. After cleaning the wound, he lay in the isolation room for a full 2 months before he could stand up again. After surviving, he helped me reinforce several external pipes and also helped me modify the backup, repair, maintenance passageway. From then on, inside the underground base, it was no longer just me alone. But the rules were also officially established from that day forward. First, anyone before entering the living area must be quarantined for 72 hours. Second, all supplies must be registered uniformly and cannot be taken privately without permission. Third, no one is allowed to approach the main control room and the power room without authorization. Fourth, no one is allowed to pick fights or cause trouble without authorization, cannot break the rules, and cannot open any door without permission. Violators will be immediately expelled. Fifth, the base can save people, but it will not risk the lives of everyone else just to save a single person. These rules, I wrote them in the most conspicuous spot at the entrance of the first underground floor. The old doctor finished reading and only said one thing: strict rules are good. In chaotic times, having no rules is what actually kills people. 2 months later, the city completely lost its original appearance. High-rise buildings were covered in ice and snow, and streets were buried under accumulated snow. Shopping, malls, hospitals, schools, all became places where the infected loitered, but the underground base gradually stabilized. The old doctor organized the medical storage, reclassifying medicines according to their usage and expiration dates. The young boy was in charge of patrolling the external cameras, while his younger sister helped water the crops in the farming area. That worker led me step by step to inspect the drainage system, walls, and backup circuits. This underground shopping mall finally was no longer a shelter for just me alone anymore. It started to look like a place where one could truly survive long-term. After that, occasionally survivors would pass by. Here, some begged for help, some swore, some tried to pry the door open, and some wept and sang outside the door, saying that they had robbed others before, and now they finally understood what the feeling of having hope stolen away was like. Half a year later, the prolonged extreme cold blizzard finally eased up. The sky was still gray, the sun like a dusty old coin hanging behind the thick layer of clouds. The infected did not disappear, but the people who were still alive had begun to re-establish order. On the outskirts of the city, several survivor settlements appeared one after another. They used abandoned shopping malls as barricades and underground parking lots as shelters from the cold. People also started to gather around stoves, clear the roads, and look for supplies that were still usable. I did not join any settlement, nor did I open the doors of the shopping mall to welcome everyone. This fortress is a lesson I exchanged my entire life for. I can give innocent people a portion of food, can give children who are about to give out a bottle of water, and can also give people who truly follow the rules shelter from wind and snow for a night in the outer buffer zone. But the living area behind the doors, the power area, and the storage vaults will never carelessly open for outsiders. Because I understand very well that in this apocalyptic era, kindness can exist, but there absolutely must be rules. During that year, I saw too many people kneeling and crying outside the door, and also saw too many people turning on each other and becoming enemies over half a bag of rice. I saw some people who, just to survive, would abandon their closest relatives and run away alone. I also once saw people who would rather starve just to save the last bite of food for their family. If it amplifies human greed, it will also push the few rare bits of good intentions left into the most visible spot. 1 year later, I stood in the control room of the underground shopping mall. In front of me was a whole wall of monitoring screens. On the screens, the city was still covered in ice and snow. Abandoned high-rises stood silently in the wind and snow, and occasionally some infected still slowly walked past the street corners. But I was no longer afraid, because behind me was the generator, operating stably the living area, glowing with warm lights, and the farming room, with lush green vegetables. In my past life, I was pushed outside the door by others. In this life, I stand inside the door, 3 layers of security doors tightly locked behind me. The keys are in my hands, and my life is also in my hands.